Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's episode, we're going to create a swirling animation using the Niagara system and Unreal Engine. This animation can be used for power-ups, collectibles, and other interactive game elements to make your project even more engaging and visually stunning. Before we jump in, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. Also, don't forget to check out my other videos for my Unreal Engine tips and tutorials. Let's go ahead and get started. To begin with, let's start with our Niagara system. So go ahead and right click, add a new Niagara system. And let's just do this from an empty one, an empty template. Go ahead and add that and finish. And I'm just going to name this Aura system, NS Aura system. Inside here, first thing I want to do is rename my emitter. And I want to name this one Energy. To start, let's go to your emitter state, and we're going to change this to self, and we're going to change it to once. And then the loop duration, we can change to whatever we need it to. I'm going to start with 5 for now, and if we want it to last longer, we can increase that or decrease it however we want. Let's go ahead and add a spawn rate. For the spawn rate, I'm going to set this to 15. But this is something that we can change along the way if we want more or less spawns. In our initialized particle, going to do a couple things here. First, I'm going to set the color that we want. I just want this to be some kind of blue for now. And I want to multiply this by maybe about 100 to get a more emissive look. So I think that looks good for now. The next thing we want to do is do a shape location so that this will spawn inside of a sphere. I want this radius to be a little bigger than this, but we can always change this as we go. The rest of the shape location should be good for now. Next, we can add a velocity here. Go ahead and fix your issues. For the velocity, I want this to be going in the upward direction like this, but I don't want every particle to be moving at the same velocity. So I'm going to do a random range vector, and I still want this in the Z direction. So I want to do a minimum of 25 in the Z direction. For the max that I want this to go up to is maybe 75 in the Z direction. So now you see some particles are going faster than others, just kind of the look that we want. That's going to be it for the velocity. So let's go to our particle update. We can add a few things in here to try to make it look a little more natural. Just put a drag in there. You can change this as much as you want, but I'm just going to leave it at a low number for now. I also want to do a scale sprite size. And I want this to be, I want this to start at the full size and go down as we go. But I'd rather it actually stay big longer and then towards the end. So I want to do something like this, the drop off. The next thing that we can do is I want to add a vortex force or a vortex velocity. I've lost my particles, so let's go see what happened. In my, I think it's my sprite size, I forgot in initialize particle, we actually want to go go to your sprite attributes, sprite size mode, and let's do maybe uniform. And we want to set this at something. We can leave it pretty low for now, maybe like 5 or um, yeah, we can leave it at 5 for now. So on to our vortex velocity. I want this to rotate around the z-axis the most. So I'm going to maybe take z to 2, and we want to increase this vortex amount until we see the rotation that we want. So now we can see our particles rotating around the z-axis. To make this feel a little more natural, I'm going to give it a slight rotation in the x and y. Something you can also do, and maybe that's what I'll do here, is go to a random range vector, and we want it to at least be a 1.5 in the z, and then we'll do that same 0.25 there and go up to R2 for this. This makes it a little more natural feeling. There's some random variation to it, so doing something like this kind of helps the look. For this, we want this origin to update based on wherever our player is. If they are going to be moving around, that may not be what you do for your project, but I'm going to go ahead and account for it now. The other thing you might you might want to just leave this where it's at if this was just going to be attached to a static item that's not really moving around. So I'm just going to come over here, and I'm going to promote this to a new user parameter, and I'm going to rename this actor location, and that'll be good for now. The next thing that we want to do is add a spring force to our particle update. We want these particles to be attracted to the actor, but I only want it slightly attracted, so I'm going to play around with some of these until it feels a little more natural. For the particle equilibrium, this is where our particles are going to be attracted to, and we want that to be this actor. So click and drag your user actor location over into the particle equilibrium, and we'll set this actor location inside of our actor blueprint once we get to that point. The next thing that we want to do, if we pull this out into the world, right now they're going to be attracted to just 0, 0, 0, which is clearly off in that direction somewhere. But one thing that we want to do is add a light to these. So if we go to our render and do a light renderer, and I want this light to be some sort of blue, I'm actually just going to um, copy this color. It may not let me actually copy it because it's a different format. So I'm going to do 45 green, 100 blue. If we go to our light render, we're going red, green, blue. So 45 green, 100 blue. And then if we watch, we have um, a little bit of light in some of these back ones you can see. We want to turn this up. And we want to actually, let's multiply this by maybe another 10. See if that'll be enough. We'll go 450 and 1000. Make this even more emissive, so that's a little better light there. So that's going to be good for that part. See if I forgot anything. We can also add a scale color. And for the scale color, really I just kind of want these to fade over time. So I'm just going to do a float from curve. And inside of this curve, I want it to start high like this and then go down. So this will actually work for what I want to see. And you can kind of see the particles now will um, fade away over time rather than just disappear. Looks a little more natural. So for the actual energy part, I think that's going to be good. The next thing we want to do is add another emitter. And again, I'm just going to add an empty emitter here. And I want to rename this to something like trail. I can spell it. I want to do emitter state, change this to self and infinite. And then for initialized particle, I'm sorry, we're going to on emitter update, let's do spawn particles from other emitter. We're going to spawn it off of energy here. So fix that issue. And inside of, fix this one as well. Inside of the spawn particles from other emitter, we need to name the emitter that we're looking for. And it's going to be energy. Now we see it spawning there. We're going to change the spawn rate, these two spawn rates here later. For now, if we go over to our initialized particle, we want these to die off a little differently. So let's do I'm gonna set lifetime mode at random, and I want this to be in between maybe like 0.2 and 0.4. So now it's a little trail. I'm going to do a shape location in here. So particle spawn, do a shape location. We're going to do the sphere, but we want this to be a tiny little sphere. So I'm just going to do maybe a 1 for the radius. For the sprite render itself, we're going to create a custom material here for this. So let's go work on that real quick. Let's remove this for now. For the custom material, we need a texture that we're going to use. I actually have a texture that I'm going to use. I kind of use it for a lot of my projects just because it's a simple little noise texture. You can create this on your own in any 3D paint or any paint program. The key to this is the way that I'm going to do this is using a grayscale. So we just want to set the background to black, and on your canvas, I try to keep this square. So I do something like 512, 512, or some sort of square ratio. And then in here, just to make a simple little noise texture, you just grab your brush and kind of just paint some random noise in here. And this can be used for smoke or all kinds of different materials or looks that you want. This was just a simple one. So you can do something like that, save it as a PNG and import it into your project, kind of like I did here. From this, I'm going to turn this into a material. So I'm going to create a new material, and I'm going to name it M Smoke Trail. And the reason we're doing this is just so we don't have those circular little sprites in the back to make it look a little more natural, give it a little more variation. Inside the smoke trail, we're going to do a few things. We want a particle color. We're going to use a texture sample. This texture sample, go ahead and set it to your smoke or whatever you named your texture. And we're going to use a radial gradient. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to grab the red off of our texture sample, and we're going to multiply this with our radial gradient off of the alpha of our particle color. We're going to grab off of the alpha and say multiply again. And this is going to multiply with our texture and radial gradient. And then these are going to go into our opacity. And to do that, we need to select our output here and change blend mode to translucent and shading model to unlit. And then we want to plug this into our opacity. And now you can see there's some empty space in between our actual texture at the point that it's grabbing it. So that looks good for now. The next thing we want to do is come off of our red, green, blue. And I'm going to do another multiply here. And then off of this multiply directly out of our texture and radial gradient, we want to plug that into this. And then this into our emissive color. So now we see that our white areas are actually white now. So that's the look we're trying to get. We want to add a little bit of animation and randomness to this material so it's not just that same thing repeating over itself. So out of your UVs, go ahead and get a panner. And then for the coordinates of this, we're going to use text chords. And then we're going to use dynamic parameter that we'll be able to change inside of our Niagara system. The first parameter is what we're going to use for this, and it's going to affect the tiling. So I'm just going to name that tiling for now. And off of our text chords, I'm going to say multiply, and I'm going to multiply it with the tiling. This will multiply and affect these going into here. We'll be able to, as I said, change that tiling inside of our Niagara system. So go ahead and plug this into your coordinate. You can kind of change these a little bit to predict what it's going to look like if you do different tilings. But I'm going to leave them at 1, and we'll change that in our Niagara system. The next thing we want to do is actually change the way this is panning. We don't want it just to be static. We want it to move. So I'm just going to give it kind of a number in the Y direction so it looks like it's going up. But you could do variations of this. You can do negative numbers to make it go the opposite direction. I think for now, I'm going to leave it just like this, and we'll see if we want to change that as we go. And the next thing that we're going to want to do is change the density here. And this is a number that we'll have to play with as we go as well to see what we want. Plug that into your density. And for now, I want to set it to 0.5. I may actually just leave it at 1, and we'll come back and see if we want to affect that in any way based on what we see in our system. And then over back into your Niagara system, if you go to your sprite renderer on your trail, and we want to just set it to that smoke trail. And now it looks like there's smoke coming off of it. We still have a few things to change in here before it's going to look really good. Let's go ahead and look through all this, see if there's anything we want to set. We want to change the color mode. Let's set that as well. And I just want this to match the color of our particle for now. We're going to want to change the size quite a bit here. So go down to your sprite attributes and do a random uniform. And I want to do these between 0.5 and 5. So we're kind of seeing a little bit there. The life of these look good for now. We want to now come up to your spawn particles from other emitter, and let's turn this number up a little bit. Go to maybe like 250. And now we're seeing more of that trail. I just set these kind of to match. And now we're actually getting the trail that we want to see. So that's starting to look good. In your particle update, let's add a few things here. Start with a scale sprite size. Same thing, I like to ramp this down so it gets smaller as the longer it's alive. So it kind of looks like the tail is tapering off. We can add a drag. Just do some small drag, it doesn't have too much. And then I'm going to do a scale color. For the scale color, um, a couple things we can do. We can do that same thing with the alpha, do a float from curve, and have it kind of fade away. And you can see what that kind of looks like. It's making it look even more tapered as it goes down. Another thing that we can do is we can do this similar to the actual red, blue, green, or red, green, blue, and do a vector from curve. And we can change this to be the longer it's alive to fade it to some other color. See if we can get in on one to see what that looks like. You see at the very end of this, it's kind of a darker blue. So we can change that around quite a bit. And you can just play with this to get it to look like what you want. And maybe I'm waiting too long to get it to change. But for now, I'm going to leave it like that. This darker blue on the back going to this lighter blue. I think that looks good. Another thing that you can always do is add a curl noise and then kind of play with that. If we jump that up, you start to see it kind of whipping around a little bit more. So you can always do something like that. Less, make it look more kind of like a fuse, look more like sparkle. So there's all kinds of ways that you can play with this. For now, I'm just going to leave it in here at kind of a low number just to get a little more random variation to the behavior. And then that's going to do it for the trail part. And let's go apply this to our person or our character real quick. If we go into the character you're going to use, I'm using this third person character. We want to, on the mesh, it doesn't have to be the mesh, that's where I'm adding it. Add your Niagara particle system. I'm going to name this just Aura. And then over in your details panel, while Aura is selected, go ahead and add that there. So now we can see what it's going to look like around our player. Next, if we jump over to our event graph, we're going to give ourselves a way to turn this on. Actually, select your Niagara system here, and then let's go auto activate off for now. And we're going to give ourselves a way to turn it on so it's not just on as soon as we start. I like to just assign this to a key. Let's make it, yeah, we can make it anything we want. I want to do E. So for to turn this on, once we press the E key, we want to get our Niagara system, and I want to say set active. Plug that in, and then you want to say new active, and you want to reset it. If I play this now, it'll activate this, but you'll see that we still don't have our location set. So all of these are just kind of floating off to 000 in the world. So the next thing we have to do is we're going to do a event tick, and we're going to have this update. We're going to say set vector parameter, and we're going to set this to our actor's location. So get actor location and plug this into this parameter. And to make this work for the correct parameter, we need to go get the name of that parameter and type it into here. So it was actor location. You can copy and paste it in or just type it in. And now if we go run this, we see it stays around our player and we have all the lights that we want. Some things that we can do now while we have this is we can go change the size of um, our tail or even our energy particle. I'm going to jump the size of the tail up a little bit, and let's maybe go 2 to 10. So a little thicker tails, which I think is what I want this to look like. Another cool effect that we can do is adding that body glow to our character. And what I mean by that is whenever we start this, we kind of want some spots to show up over the character that'll be glowing just to add a little bit of animation or effect to your character. So let's go ahead and add that. So back into your Niagara system, let's do another emitter, just an empty emitter, and I'm going to name this body glow. For this one, we can do a sprite renderer and actually set those particles over the player's mesh. Um, we can start with that for now, but we're going to change it to light renderers. So first of all, we're in body glow emitter state, and we're going to do self and once. We want this to match the loop duration of whatever we set here for the way I'm doing it, but you can have it actually glow for the rest of the time once you obtain an item, or you can have it stop glowing or change its glow. For now, I'm just going to set this to 5 to match it. So whenever it stops, it'll stop glowing. We're going to add a spawn rate here. And I'm going to set this to like 200. For the initialized particle, set the lifetime of this to something like 2. And we're going to on the color mode, do a direct set. And let's give this some different color for now. We can play with this color as we go as well. The next thing we want to do in particle spawn is we're going to add a mesh, initialize mesh reproduction sprite. And what we want to do here is we're going to actually set the scalable mesh that we want to apply to this. And we can read this from a user parameter. And here we have to select the scalable mesh that we're using. For the character I'm using, it's this Quinn Simple, but you can just go to your blueprint, select the mesh, and then look over the details for the scalable mesh. So I'm just going to set this to Quinn Simple. And then make sure it's over here as well. Next, I'm going to add in the particle update, let's now do update mesh reproduction sprite. Same thing here. We're going to take this user mesh here and we're going to plug it in over here. Then we can add our light renderer. And for the light render, we no longer need the sprite render, so we'll turn that off for now. With the light renderer, I'm going to jump this to like a 1.5 radius. And we want the color to be something, for now, let's just do like 500 in the blue. And then we'll see what that looks like. Check if I'm missing anything real quick. See what that looks like. We're not getting our light, but if we move, our particles try to come find us. Not sure why I'm not getting my light. Let me look for a second. The mesh. Oh, if you get the CPU access error, do fix now. That hopefully, I think should fix it. So now we see the light glowing on me. I kind of went with this darker blue light. And so we can also do the sprite renderer on this if you have different looks that you want to put on there. This one has little peak dots going on it. For now, I'm not actually going to use the sprite renderer on here, so I'm going to turn that back off and just keep it as the light renderer. And let's look at our final product. Tons of ways you can customize this or change it to behave how you want for your game, add a lot more emitters to it, add some smoky effect or trails. You can add ribbons for the trails instead of this little smoky trail that I did. Right, tons of ways to customize it for your own project. And that's going to do it for this episode. Today, we successfully created this stunning swirling animation for our power ups and collectibles using the Niagara system and Unreal Engine. With this in your toolbox, you can make your game even more visually appealing and immersive. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss future content. Be sure to check out all my other episodes in this series and others as well. As always, happy developing, and I'll see you in the next one.